Well, hi everybody, welcome back to our professional development webinar series here with Ave Maria Press. Our goal in this series is to provide parish staff and volunteers, as well as diocesan ministers, the formation, the training, and the tools they need to create vibrant Catholic parishes and growing ministries. In today's webinar, Faith Formation for Generations and Seasons of Adulthood, John Roberto will help us understand the best ways to tailor our ministries to the specific needs and life situations of each stage of adulthood. I'm Jared Dees, I'm the Digital Marketing Manager here at Ave Maria Press, and I'm joined today by Christina Pignon, the Parish Marketing Coordinator.
And before we begin our webinar today, we would like to recognize our webinar partners, the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association of Catholic Family Life Ministers, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation of Priest Councils. Everyone in the audience is muted today, but you are able to ask questions. The questions can be sent to our presenters using the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel, which you can see displayed here. We will read as many of those questions as possible at the end of the presentation. And the webinar is being recorded, and a link to that recording will be sent to you later on this week via email.
All right, so with that we want to extend a very warm welcome to John Roberto. He's the president of Lifelong Faith Associates and works as a consultant to churches and national organization. He teaches courses and conducts workshops in faith formation and is the project coordinator of the Certificate in Faith Formation for the 21st Century, a 2-year online ministry education program sponsored by Vibrant Faith. His latest publications from Lifelong Faith include Families at the Center of Faith Formation, Seasons of Adult Faith Formation, Reimagining Faith Formation for the 21st Century, Generations Together, and Faith Formation 2020. So John, thanks so much for presenting today.
Thanks, good to be here.
I'm going to make you the presenter, so look for that pop-up.
Great. And there we go. Well, welcome everybody. I'll do one little housekeeping detail. That is simply that some resources you might be aware of. Lifelongfaith.com is my website, and the 2 resources on the right, the 2 journal issues, are great companions to today's workshop, summit webinar, and you can get those online for free at Lifelong Faith. And also, I put the session in as well. So this webinar, I've got the PDF and the PowerPoint available for you, as well as the article that this is based on that was in the NCCL journal. And I'll mention later an adult faith formation survey. I put that online as well. So if you just go to lifelongfaith.com, you'll get access to all of that. So let me start with just really focusing on, when we talk about the seasons of adulthood, who are we talking about? We're talking about young adults in their 20s and 30s, and we have this unique thing going on that age-wise and generation-wise, people are matching up. So it doesn't happen all the time. But people in their 20s and 30s are millennials today. The midlife adults, 40s to mid-50s, are primarily Gen X. Mature adults, mid-50s to 75, are the baby boom generation, and the older adults, 75 plus, are the building, or I should say the builder generation, not the building generation, the builder generation. So we have an interesting confluence of developmental stages, life stages, with generational groupings. And each of these seasons of adulthood presents a whole series of life issues. At each stage, there's physical and cognitive change going on. There's developmental tasks. The family life cycle is at play in each one of these stages. Then we have the faith development stages. The variety of spiritual religious identities, from those who are actively engaged in faith and church life to those who are not affiliated and not practicing. And then generational identities. Each of these generations has their particular characteristics. So when we're thinking about adulthood, we're now thinking about it in 4 stages, going from 20s to the hundreds, multiple decades, multiple generations, and each with its own unique characteristics. And characteristics have a huge importance for us in faith formation. So the questions I grapple with in writing and developing programming and training and the rest is, how do we address all 4 seasons of adulthood and the diverse needs of each season? How can we reach, connect with, and engage each generation of faith formation? And how do we balance faith formation for all adults across all 4 seasons with faith formation for 1 season of adults. So as I'm working with parishes and churches trying to help them develop adult faith formation, once they see this whole picture of the seasons, they're kind of overwhelmed by how do we address these seasons and their diverse needs. I think we need to do a couple of things. We need to transform our approach, and we need to transform our role. So we really need to think about this through a 21st century lens. So we know what our typical approach has been to adult faith formation. By and large, it has been one that's been more programmatic, more provider-centered, more focused on trying to do a kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. I think we're going to transform our approach to address all of these seasons by, one, providing an abundance of content and experiences. There's no longer anything that will address all 4 of these seasons. So we need to think much more about not a one-size-fits-all, but really multiple ways to reach people. So an abundance of content and experiences developed around the needs and lives of adults in each season and across the seasons, which is available on demand 24/7. We know that people's lives are so busy that we have to be able to be available to them wherever they are and wherever they go. And so in one sense, today, faith formation is quite portable and quite personal because we can actually go to our individuals. Using multiple environments, moving away from just one model, but using multiple models, independent, mentored at home and through daily life, small group, large group, church-wide in the world. So we could think about even one program that can be offered in multiple environments, one resource that can serve multiple environments. We need to build a digital platform. I think central to this is that in the digital world, we can integrate all of our faith formation content experiences seamlessly when we think about a digital platform. We all know that most church websites, parish websites, are really more information sites than they are formation sites. And so a digital platform that's created for faith formation is really a learning, experiential, content-centered that resources, engages, and connects with people. We need to use some digitally connected strategies. The only way to reach everybody is to think about all the strategies that we can use to really connect with individuals and groups at home in their daily life. So we should be digitally connected to enhance what we already do and expand what we do, and in many ways create some brand new approaches to doing faith formation. More and more we're thinking about how do we become episodic and foster micro-learning. Certainly the most important thing that we're coming away with in terms of where education, especially corporate education training, is they're much more thinking episodically. So the linear sequential 30 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks is really morphing into episodic engagements. All week, 3 weeks, an episode, an event, an experience, and even micro-learning, which is really dominant in corporate training today. And it's really influenced by YouTube and the way in which people learn digitally. So 5, 10, 15-minute learning experiences that are then form a pattern. So there are multiple experiences. You've all noticed that the long, hour-long videos are pretty much gone online unless you're on Netflix watching a whole series of them. But on YouTube, we went from 15-minute to 10-minute and now 3 to 4 to 5-minute videos, but repeatable. So it's not just 3 to 5 minutes, it's more, they form a pattern. So we're becoming more episodic, more micro-learning, but we want to build patterns of learning that are repeatable. And then I think the sixth transformation is that we now in the digital world have the ability to personalize the pathways for people's learning. We can really be one size fits one, not one size fits all. And I'll talk a little bit about how we can personalize some of those pathways. So these are the 6 I see. We have an abundance of content experiences. The digital world's presented us with all kinds of great content. We can use multiple environments that blend the physical and the virtual. We can build digital platforms that integrate this. We can use digitally connected strategies. We can more focus on episodic engagements and micro-learning and lots of them. And we can personalize faith formation in a way that really wasn't even possible 5 or 10 years ago. We're also going to have to transform our role. I think on the left, most of us have seen our roles, and it's certainly the role I grew up in when I started 46, 47 years ago, is that we had to develop religious content because content was scarce. So we had to develop our own programming. People developed their curriculum. They started from scratch, basically. Well, that's changed. We also were involved in designing programming, whether it was curriculum or courses, retreats, experiences, because that wasn't available. We managed programming, organized it, marketed it, and set up tables and chairs and provide refreshments. And then we're also involved in teaching and facilitating that programming. Now, we're not going to give up entirely the roles on the left. That's why I talk about how we balance them. But what's certainly emerging are these. We're going to be much more architects of learning because we're going to design faith-forming environments in which this content experience will take place. And so we're going to craft environments where people can learn. Many of those, in fact, most of those, are not going to be on the church campus. We're going to design digital platforms for faith-forming content available 24/7 with content that runs the whole gamut from audio, video, podcasts, engaging, relevant content to people's lives. And then we're going to become curators of content experiences, that when you have an abundance of content, media that's available to us, our job is now to curate rather than to create. And so, again, we'll balance curating and creating. We'll balance the digital and the physical, if you will. But I think our roles are going to be much more on the right as we move forward than on the left. Those two big transformations, I want to play some of those out in terms of some of the core ways to think about adult faith formation for all the seasons. First big concept is networks. Some of you might remember way back when, for some this may be brand new, but Malcolm Knowles, who was the kind of the leading edge of adult education in the United States, really one of the first most prominent people that gave birth to adult education over the last 50 years. And in the 1970s, in fact, in 1975, he wrote a book called The Adult Learner. And at the very end of the book, he talked about this idea that was emerging called a lifelong learning resource system. Well, today we call it a network. But Knowles lived in the analog era, not the digital era. So he talked about how you marshaled all the resources and coordinated the resources in a community to meet the needs of individuals. Basically a network, but it was very much of a physical network made up of organizations, institutions, with people who were planning consultants and educational diagnosticians. I just love that word. But these were creating lifelong learning resource centers for people. In 2017, that looks a lot more like network learning. So when we think about learning today, the person is at the center of his or her network. And so when we're talking about adults, it's their own motivation to learn and grow in faith that's going to drive them. And so we do network learning pretty naturally. If we want to learn something, especially in our faith religious learning, we can take a course or a workshop at a real physical location. We can read a book, take an online course, watch a video, listen to a podcast, find a mentor, join a small group, take a field trip, visit people who know, engage in an action project, and you could add another dozen to that. We're much more comfortable crafting for ourselves a network around us to help us learn something. And we want to take that individual model and Knowles' initial work and say, what would we like to create networks of faith formation for adults? A network is always built around how do we research the needs of people. So it's the person-centered, responsive. So when we're talking about the 4 seasons of adulthood, we want to use surveys, focus groups, interviews, research reviews to find out what are the needs of people that we want to respond to and address, and what are the ones in our own parish communities and church communities that we want to focus on. I just put a sample list on the right for a little research project I did with one church that I was working with. These were 11 things that really popped for the mature adults, the 55 and over crowd. And we did the survey so we could break out each of the 4 seasons based on what they were looking for. again, if I'm going to create a network, I'm going to build that network not around what I think adults need, but around what adults are saying are the most important things in their life. And it's going to be a blend of a whole variety of areas that they're going to want to see addressed in terms of their own spiritual and religious growth. So you see the 11 there. That's just illustrative, but it does give a bit of when we're life-centered and we move from life to faith. Our question is, how do we respond effectively to those needs and concerns? So I'll launch this now, and I'll kind of give you an overview, and then we'll talk about the digital strategies. But I think at the core of adult faith formation today and the core of the network approach is building a digital platform that can integrate what we do at church, at home, in the community, in daily life, and then online, so that we can surround our adults with a whole variety of ways to learn that really moves the motivation for learning from us to them and addresses a wide diversity of their needs, things we could never do in a programmatic formula. I think oftentimes adult faith formation is stymied because we just don't have the time or the bandwidth, so to speak, to really address the needs that adults have. We just don't have enough time to do the programming. And even when we do, we all know how few will actually come out to a program because their lives are so busy. So building an adult faith formation network moves from the needs of people into the resources available that we can then provide them in a whole variety of ways. So rather than go to the website at the moment, I built a website. You can go to it. I put that on when you download the PowerPoint. It's just called seasonsofadultfaith.com, and it's kind of an illustration of saying, what if you started with the needs of adults and you wanted to respond to those and gave them a variety of ways to learn and grow, and let them use these playlists. The concept is simple. It simply comes from Spotify and all the music ones. Playlists of content and experiences that they can choose from, and utilize the abundance of content, and then selectively talk about the things that we'll do on campus at the parish. So here's just some examples. I organized one under adult living, another one about discovering faith of those who might want to make steps back into a relationship with Christ and into church. Faith enrichment, a variety of different ways to do that. Scripture, and again, a variety of ways. So no one will do all of that. In fact, they might sample a cross playlist. They might focus on a particular playlist. But what I want to note is that each of these has an anchor that is at the parish. So for example, this year-long journey to the Christian faith is a 10-session program monthly that is at that church. So some of these might be things where they do on their own, a small, like if you follow down, a small group study program, which can be done anywhere, at church, at home, at a cafe, a self-study program, etc. For scripture, a gospel presentation series, a small group study. So there's online study on them all by themselves. So there's a lot of different ways we can help people take that. So I make the goal, can I offer them enough variety that they'll want to do something in scripture over a 4-month season? And we talk about developing this platform network for 4 months. So September through December, January through April, May through August. So it's 3 seasons of playlists. So those are 4 of them. We did another one around the seasons of the year that gives you a chance to kind of blend the church year seasons and the daily seasons, the calendar seasons. Service and mission opportunities, all of which were kind of off campus. Spiritual life experiences. Again, you'll notice number 1 under spiritual life was a 5-session spiritual practices course. And the other ones provide other options like a book study group, take their own devotion time. There's a whole listing of devotions they could have, take an online course, etc. And then Sunday worship, how to bring Sunday worship home, a whole variety of ways to extend Sunday worship into their daily life. The goal of a network is to give our adults around major areas of faith formation, built around their needs, a whole wide variety of programming, activities, resource experiences that they can participate in. And then once we've built that network, we can begin to ask very strategic questions. When do we want to gather adults and for what? And that's what I try to do in these examples, to say, gather them strategically, gather them around things you can only do together, but then use other platforms at home, in your daily life, in a small group that meets anywhere and anytime, that we can now deliver that content. So the network is the platform for which all this great faith formation can happen. Sometimes adult faith formation is integrated into what the whole community is doing. So I worked with one church that wanted to do faith formation for everybody, given its size and the rest, it just worked. And they thematized it. So each month they were going to focus on a particular theme that was reflected in worship, in music, in the preaching throughout that whole month. And then they provided during the month activities. So I just this is a snapshot really of the adult page. I developed a very simple template for them. I said, let's develop a category called Learn, Pray, Read, Listen, Watch, and Live. And then take activities each month that develop the theme. So this was the month, this is I think the first month. This is the first month on gratitude. And so I just did simple activities to illustrate how they could work on the theme of gratitude. A TED Talk with Brother David Steindl-Rast, another video piece on gratitude, a prayer each week using a psalm, a read and listen kind of activity, and then some ways to live it out in your life with this wonderful website on gratefulness that patterns your day of giving thanks throughout the day. Very simple kind of idea. But what this did was, it was a both and. It was both intergenerational, meaning the whole community, but it was also generationally specific when we talked about meeting the needs of adults. So both are networks, they're just different styles of networks. I build a network around 3 seasons of programming, fall, winter, spring, and summer. Just for simplicity, no one thinks broader than 4 months anyway, much easier to develop content in those 4 months. And yes, I would develop content and programming in the summer. It may not be at church, but with a network, it doesn't have to be at church. It can be really anywhere people go. Second big concept is digitally enabled and digitally connected. This connects obviously to the network, but it also connects to the things that we're doing on campus for adults in terms of our programming. I use 5 strategies to try to help me be strategic about how do we think about being digitally enabled. And these are basically blended learning strategies that I've adapted for our purposes here. If you go right to left, in red, gathered program with supportive online content is by far the simplest. And that's simply, I'm doing a presentation and I'm using online content in and through the presentation. So that's the lowest bar, so to speak, but it brings online content into a gathered experience. The middle 3 tend to be where people, well, the next 4 tend to be the little bit more adventuresome for people. The gathered program with online components that go beyond the program. In other words, you have a gathered program, and it's really great. People have come to our program, but the question is, how do we extend that and deepen that learning? I'll give you some examples of that. The middle one is the blend of online and gathered. It goes by the name of the flipped classroom in academic circles, but basically it's flipping the program. What you do is you're flipping the content. The content now resides online. So the gathered session takes on a different tone of a kind of a laboratory experience, discussion experience. Move over one more into kind of the orange. It's mostly online, and spliced into the online experience are some regular interactions. So it might be a group that's going to do a 6-8 week Bible study, and they meet online. They meet in person to start it, and they meet at the end to conclude it. But all the rest is happening online. Could also be happening like this in a web conference where they talk to each other, but they only actually gather physically twice. And the far end is fully online. This is one of the best options for adult faith formation because we have so much great content that's available that if we curate it well, we can provide people with great prayer resources, learning resources, online courses, etc., that can be used by a group or can be used by an individual. So we've got lots of that available to us. Let me give you some examples. Extend the event. This is a bread and butter strategy. So I've got my digital platform, so I now, without the digital platform, all these kind of limp a bit, as you might imagine. So we're doing a church event or program. We want to connect to people's home life and daily life. The extend the event is a great strategy. So, for example, Sunday worship is the best example of an extend the event. But you could also look at what I'll call the traditional 4-session Lenten program at church. In most churches, Wednesday night, 7:30 to 9 o'clock or 7 to 8:30, most churches can actually know who's going to show up without even marketing the program. These are the same people who showed up last year and the year before and the year before. So we do the program. It's usually high quality, but we always bemoan the fact that not enough people came, or it's only an hour. Can we do more than that? That's what this strategy is meant to do. How can we extend the event into people's daily lives? So just think about all the resources that are available just on Sunday worship alone. How can we help people through the week learn, pray, read the Bible, just the daily readings, which are available from the USCCB website in audio and written, and live out the meaning? These are just 4 samples of interesting sites that, so St. Louis University does the Sunday website. There's all kinds of content there. Every week, the American Bible Society does a Lectio Divina around the Catholic lectionary. A good friend of mine, Tom Thomasek, does the 5 loaves, and every week he does a video you can connect to that puts the gospel reading into a video format with a music reflection as well as a biblical reflection. And the Augustine Institute does. I just discovered this actually preparing for this. Does this great video on the 4th Sunday of Easter. I think this has been a series called Opening the Word. So that's just a sample. There's all kinds of content for adults on Sunday worship. Curating that content allows us to lead them out from Sunday worship, or really any program. Connect what we do at Sunday worship, let people know that this is happening. So as they kind of sent off, remind them online or Sunday worship are this week's experiences. That sets us up for next Sunday, and this becomes a wonderful loop of a weekly set of resources where they can learn more, pray more, read the Bible, live. This is just a bread and butter strategy. People are at Sunday worship. How do we extend that? This is the one event or one program, multiple formats idea. So go back to that Lenten series. You brought 4 great speakers in. You got the usual 28 people who came. Don't bemoan the fact. Do the program for the 28, but think bigger than that. How can I offer that Lenten program in multiple formats? Gathered, small group, independent, online. So the first thing I need to do is make sure I video record the presentation. Get my presenter ready. Come in and do the hour presentation. Make sure that I can take that video and put it into like 4 15-minute segments for easy viewing online. Then now I have something I can offer, not just in the gathered format, which we've just done. I can now repurpose it for a small group format, put a little study guide to it. People can watch this, gather a small group. If we met on Wednesday night, maybe they do it on Friday night in someone's home, and they're watching it from our website. And I put a discussion question for each of the 4 parts. And so now I've got something that will go beyond the Wednesday. I got people using it throughout the week. You travel a lot. You can't get to programs all the time. Your life is busy. You can watch it while you're waiting for your son or daughter at a sports practice, because you can get it on your mobile device and you're watching the video while you have time. Because if you're a parent of children or teenagers and you want something in adult faith formation, it's got to be portable and it's got to be ready for you when you've got time. And a lot of that is just waiting for your kids at an athletic practice or band or ballet or whatever. And then we put the whole thing online. So now it's available and it won't die. The best thing about Lent is if you do this for the 4 programs, 4 sessions just outlined, you now have a program that you can come back to next year at Lent, because Lent will be back. So the digital content allows us then to to put more with it. We could extend the content. We could put additional videos, activities, the rest that supplement the event program that is now in video format. And then add a social media piece to it. So let's have a Facebook group for just this Lenten program and invite people and moderate discussion and activity with us that people can interact, connect, share their experience. Maybe have a question each week people respond to. So use Facebook for what it's really meant to be, a social connection among people. So between multiple formats, website and social media, that 4-week program has just been expanded to reach a whole variety of people that you never thought of reaching. Build on an event or experience. As sacramental people, we're pretty familiar with this process of preparing for a sacrament, experiencing the sacrament, and the mystagogy of the sacrament. But in fact, this process can go on throughout any intensive experience. So it's adults on a mission trip, preparing, experiencing, but then how do we help them live and sustain that? The website provides the perfect place for the content and the interaction with Facebook and social media to be able to sustain what people are having. Think about the ability to take parent preparation for a sacrament and view it in this lens in terms of how can parents be preparing, not always by coming to a program, but by using online content. And how can we sustain what they've experienced in a longer term way by providing after the program content. So thinking about the digital platform is we could take an event or experience and online or blended, online and gathered, prepare people, experience that event in person with the community, and then live that out with online content that can be used in multiple ways. I gave this example to people who were doing camp ministry, and their biggest dilemma was how do we sustain a camp program, because the best part of camp it's a week, but the worst part of camp it's a week. And I said, just think about it. You can extend this by every month, bringing online a new theme, a new Bible story, the rest, that you can sustain that in the lives of people and deepen their experience of camp. Well, we can do this with any intensive adult experience. We can extend that. It's the hardest part of RCIA is the mystagogy. But if we started thinking this way, we might have another way to look at the mystagogy piece of saying, how do we sustain the faith of the newly baptized, the newly initiated, by building a network, by adding that to our network just for them. Flip the model. Again, you can see again how this is going to work with the online platform. So we've got a program and we've got our home daily life. What we used to do in the program was teach the content. In flipping the model, we're going to ask people to explore the content in their daily life, whether it's in print, audio, video, whatever the activities might be, so that they learn the content and then come to the program to apply the content, create, practice, perform, participate. Schools are doing this really across the board with high quality video content available. Teachers are curating great content, having children and teenagers watch that video, and then in class apply what they've learned. So the teaching model is becoming a facilitator, guide, mentor model, and very successfully. So what if you flip Christian initiation? So when you think about the catechumenate, how much time do we spend teaching people, and how much time do we spend apprenticing people? Now, I have a hunch that we spend more time on the teaching than the apprenticing. I just put these four up there only because these are 4 sources of great digital content that's available. The Catholicism program is one example. My Catholic Faith Delivered has a variety of content. Formed has a library of content. Ascension Press has a variety of all great digital content, all Catholic content. What if we flip Christian initiation so that the content we wanted people used to have to teach in a group, they watched on a video. So when they came to a group, the goal was to personalize and discuss and apply and integrate that into one's life. So 5 years ago, yeah, that would have been hard to do, but not today. We could actually flip Christian initiation so that the catechumenate can really be much more of an in-depth experience and apprenticeship into the Christian life than a theology seminar. We can do far more of that great Catholic content in video format that can really transform, I think, the way we do initiation. This can apply across the board to really any program. Here's a great example of integrate online with gathered. The two working hand in hand. This is not a Catholic example, but boy, I wish it was a Catholic example. Slate Project is a group in Baltimore. It gathers both online and face-to-face, but it's very 20 and 30-something. So again, they're our millennial crowd. And you can go online, just Google the Slate Project to see what they're doing. But here's how they do it. So Mondays, they have dinner church. By the way, everything's a hashtag because Twitter is their primary means of communication, and I would say almost a faith formation. But they gather physically. Then they do faith formation through a hashtag Slate Reads and Slate Speaks. So Slate Reads is, you see that on the bottom right corner, our online book study. So these are 20, 30-somethings. The chance you gather them 3 times in a week, not a chance. So they focused on the dinner church experience, which kind of launches the week. So the Bible study happens Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Twitter. There's a reading for each week. So there's a chapter, for example, that each week they would do. And the conversations are formed by those readings. So it happens on hashtag Slate Reads. And then there's hashtag Slate Speaks. So this is the conversation piece of what they do. So they might do a presentation a la Twitter, so it might be a video they watch. And you see Victoria responding that last hour was awesome. But it's all happening in Twitter. So they have a digital bookmark. There's a new topic each week. But a lot of their faith formation is happening online. But they're gathering, the face-to-face worship is happening face-to-face. It's a great example of using the newest of new and the oldest of old. So Twitter and the booklet, and then old, gathering for dinner church. A good friend of mine, Keith Anderson, who's the one holding up his glass there with the cheers next to it. He's a pastor at Upper Dublin Lutheran Church in Pennsylvania. And he's had an interesting take on God on tap, theology on tap, is that it's both physical, obviously, but it's also virtual. So what he's done is the God on Tap discussion begins online with his God on Tap blog. And the blog is the faith formation piece. This is what we're going to talk about tomorrow night. So people read that. They can even interact with that. Then they meet in person. And of course, who would not want to meet over a beer and a discussion with these people? And the discussion continues online. So it's this kind of perfect loop. So it's gathered and it's online. It's just a great example of, again, using the new technologies to do faith formation. We just finished our Lenten season, and I think all the time that you can do a whole online Lenten curriculum if you wanted to. I won't bore you with all the details, but just think of all the Lenten content that you were exposed to in the 40 days of Lent, that you got in email or got through workshops or the rest. There's just tons of content. And so what I often tell people to do is focus on what you want to see happening in people's daily life. And then ask, how do we bring church and daily life together with an online platform? A lot of you know that people come to Ash Wednesday, and oftentimes the next time you see them is Easter Sunday, and all they've done is miss Lent. Or you see them sporadically during Lent. Well, you can provide a seamless Lenten experience for people online. Lenten learning resources, Lenten calendar. Busted Halo does an annual one that's just great. Then daily Lenten prayer, weekly table prayer, video. So there's so much Lenten content. You could easily curate each day of Lent on your website without creating any resources yourself, just curating resources. We can do the same thing, by the way, for Christmas, Advent, Christmas season. So online only, in the sense that the resources exist online, but obviously they connect with the church season. Online prayer, one of my favorites, Praise You Go. Prayers of the People is another great resource. there's just so many online prayer things. Loyola Press, for example, and the Jesuits have so many of those resources available. So there's tons and tons of online prayer. We can curate that for different ages, or just offer a variety that move from more visual and audio to more written and verbal. So all kinds of resources available out there. You can even do online pastoral care. I was moved by a couple of stories I read recently of how Caring Bridge turned into a whole community for people with serious illness, and the person was was in cancer treatment, and she said, I just never really believed in the power of the internet community thing until I got really sick, and I realized that there were 300 or 400 people praying for me, thinking of me, connecting with me, people I'll never ever meet, but who I related to in a very tangible, physical way as I went through cancer treatment. So it's amazing kind of things that are happening. Again, people looking for online resources. This is an area where, for adult faith formation, online resources for caregivers, the boomer generation caring for their builder generation parents. AARP is an example. AARP has a great website and resources for caregivers. We could certainly provide that kind of resource for people in our community. And then online learning. I could fill a dozen slides of online learning examples formed with all their content, which I will tell you a funny story about. I was doing a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and a pastor said, we just bought Formed, and our people aren't using it. I said, well, it's like you just bought a library. I said, you have to curate Formed. You have to match content, courses, whatever, with the needs of people. So that's why the network platform is so good, is you can actually match make. People have this need, they could find that resource. That would be true for Formed. Spirituality and Practice is just the best website on spirituality, courses, resources. Boston College offers online courses. Notre Dame STEP offers online courses, and there's more we could add to that list. So, but they have to be curated. You can't send people to STEP and say, you're on your own. What courses do we want to curate and offer our people? That would be really, really important. So last piece I want to do is personalizing faith formation. What's possible today, because of all the things we just looked at, is we can personalize people's pathways for discipleship and faith growth. So if you've got a network, you can actually guide people in discerning their religious and spiritual needs. You can guide them with the resources and tools to learn and grow at their own pace. And a lot of times these people are going to group together because they're all at the same point in their spiritual journey. We can provide mentoring and support for people on the journey. Every parish community has mentors, spiritual guides who can help people who want to learn. Great way to utilize the baby boomers and the people who've been lifelong members of the community. One of the students I have in the certificate class, now I know you can't read all this. I'll put this, I didn't put it yet online. I'll put this where the PowerPoints are so you can download this. Kathy Pittenger is a Methodist pastor of lifelong faith formation in Michigan. And Methodist Church in the United States has made a real push to help people with personalized pathways of discipleship. And what Kathy's done here around three big content areas: connecting with God, connecting with others, connecting our world with Christ's love, it was without saying level 1, level 2. She said, planting, nurturing, shaping, and sharing. Where are you in this process? So for example, if you hit the top row, I'm learning about daily devotions. The next one, I'm practicing. Next one, I'm using spiritual devotions. Last one, I'm revising my practices. I'm sharing them with others. You can see how you're just deepening that. Well, what she's going to set up as part of our program is she's going to make every one of these boxes clickable. That if you click down planting and learning about devotions, you'll get a page that has devotions that are just geared towards starting. If you click down nurturing, you'd have ones that are going the next step, et cetera, et cetera. So she's trying to personalize people's faith formation experience. Now, some of the things she's going to connect them with will be online resources. Sometimes it'll be a small group. Sometimes it'll be a church-wide program. again, multiple environments. But I just thought this is a great way to think about when you have a big network and you have a diversity of people's needs and you have people's religious and spiritual growth across a whole spectrum, that we can now personalize this. Think about adults coming into the RSIA if they started with this kind of a process, or think about groups that are starting. What a great way to get people to start thinking, where am I in my walk with God? What do I need to do next in that walk? How do I want to go deeper in my relationship? What do I want to learn more about the church, and et cetera, et cetera. This is kind of one of the ways to get at that, which I like a lot. Other people have picked up on the same thing. This is more of a checklist. On the left, the pathway. The one on the right, which you cannot read, nor can I, is organized into believing in Christ, growing in Christ, close to Christ, Christ-centered. So again, it's a growth thing. I like Kathy's language because it's so non-judgmental. But again, the same idea. Where are you in that? And then how can we personalize faith formation around you? And so simple, assess our learning, work with a mentor to develop a plan, find the programs and resources which we now have in our network, engage in learning, share with others, and reflect on that growth and identify new needs and keep the process moving. I think this is the growing edge of adult faith formation. I mean, this is the ultimate moving away from the one-size-fits-all to really personalizing it and helping people develop their pathways to deeper faith and discipleship. So welcome back. Hopefully we've got some questions, Jared.
We do indeed. Yeah, let me take controls back over here so you don't have to worry about what's on your screen. We've got a lot of questions that have already come in, John, and I'm sure we'll have more in the next few minutes here. So just if you're interested in asking some questions, now would be the time to do that. Just do that in the question section of the GoToWebinar panel, and we will get as many of those in as we can today. First of all, I saw a big uptick in interest when you were talking about that Twitter chat, and I was very interested. I kind of started in my notes, and can you tell us a little bit more about that, about how that actually worked? What, was somebody live streaming a video, or people just kind of commenting on the hashtag and that's how they communicated? How does that actually work to do like a Bible study on Twitter?
Yeah, what they've done is, and they vary the medium. So they might create a little video piece, so there'll be a link to a video. People watch the video, and then they start a conversation. It could be that people are reading a Bible passage. They can go to Bible Gateway or read a Bible passage, and then they start a conversation. So there's always somebody on staff or on the team who's facilitating the discussion. But it's basically, they start with a content piece and then off they go. And it's topical. So they don't, like, everyone's kind of self-contained. And so I've seen them start with a video piece that's 5-10 minutes, and then people start engaging around that. And then you have to be pretty nimble as a facilitator, I think, because somebody says, well, what about this? You have to be ready to say, well, let's check this out, and then everybody go online, check that, and then come back. But that's their faith conversation piece online.
That's really fascinating. Thank you. Christina, you got a question lined up for us?
Yeah. Here's one that's asking, how do you implement this vision with elderly persons who are not media or tech savvy?
My first suggestion is make sure their grandkids give them a tablet for Christmas. And then you're off and running, okay? So here's how people address it. The interesting thing is the older generation, and I tell every church what they should first do is do a technology audit. Find out what people actually have, because the older generation actually has a lot of these tools because they've gotten them as Christmas gifts. So a lot of churches have done what they call App Sunday, which is really cool. So you just after Mass on Sunday, you simply have the kids, and when I'm talking about kids, today they'd probably be around third graders, but middle school and high school kids, set up with older adults and just teach them how to use their device, how to download an app, how to use this, how to access this. It can be very church. It can be very, let's say the church puts the sermons online. So how could you access that? So sometimes it's just kind of focusing the content. So the kids are great teachers. The adults are pretty good listeners and learners. The nice thing, it's also intergenerational. So you get a twofer. You get technology assistance and you get relationships built. You can't put everything for older adults online. You have to do printed versions of some things, and so you do that. You pick and choose what you do. The other thing is, this is a great way to go visit people, let's say in nursing homes or convalescent homes, that kind of thing, and bring the church to them. I'm amazed. My mother-in-law is in a nursing home. She's 96. They have the best broadband, I think, in the whole state of Connecticut. I mean, it's a new facility, so but they're 96-year-olds. I mean, what are they doing? I'm not even watching Netflix. What good is it? But people bringing a tablet and saying, let me show you what's going on at church this week, or there's some great things on here for older adults, and again, it's intergenerational. So it's a backdoor way of building intergenerational relationships, either from the church community or from just family members doing it. So I think there's ways to overcome that. And increasingly, every year, it's going to be less and less a problem, because even the old timers are going to have the technology in front of them. They're just going to get it. But just make a wish list for Christmas gifts or birthday gifts and say, give grandma or grandpa, or great-grandma or great-grandpa, a tablet, easy to use. Don't confuse them. Just make it easy to use.
So Terry's question, I liked what you said, by the way, at the very end about Formed.org. I know a lot of parishes are buying Formed, which is a library of videos and resources, audiobooks and ebooks. But I think you're exactly right. Is what a parish needs to do is curate the content. They can't just say, we have Formed.org, go get your login and go watch the stuff. You got to do something about that. Terry's question is, so how do you envision a curated website separate from a parish website, like a link on the website or pages on the parish website? What would you do kind of on a practical level there?
I think very practically, unless the parish has a very robust and new website, and many are getting there, but the vast majority do not, you have to build a separate website for faith formation. So you can add the video, add the content, and also have some control over it so that you can update things rather quickly. And then from the parish website, you simply build a link. So when somebody clicks on adult faith formation, what they get is Seasons of Adult Faith. So that website opens up. And so you build a bridge between the two. But usually the parish website has so much information on it that there's just no room for formational content. So I build a separate website.
Good advice. Thanks.
Let's see. There was another question regarding, just a parish and how they have two different communities, whether it's two different, like one speaks Spanish, one is Vietnamese. But how can you bring those two groups closer together by implementing adult faith formation? Do you have any suggestions on that?
I think so. If you're using like the network approach, one website can have it can have formation activities in English, Spanish. Now I don't know how much Vietnamese content there is, so I won't comment on that. But Spanish and English, there's plenty of Spanish content, and often parallel content. So as an example, the content I showed, American Bible Society, Lectio Divina, comes in English and Spanish. So there's a lot of folks who do doubles like that. Sometimes the digital platform could be a place to bring people together safely. Where I can find my content online, we could have a shared experience, and then maybe, this is kind of the reverse. Sometimes you start online and you move to gather. So people are accessing or watching video or this, and you say, we're going to gather for this program. So let's say, for example, we're going to do a three-part webinar series in the fall on whatever the three topics are. We're going to do it in English and Spanish. But in December, that's September, October, November, in December, we're all going to gather together, everybody who's watched the webinar. And we're going to bring people together around a common experience they've had online, which they're now going to have a physical experience. And we're going to feed them, and they're going to be thrilled because there's food. And we'll do a presenter with that. so I think sometimes the network platform takes away some of the barriers for everybody to participate, but also sets the table, so to speak, for people to come together around some common experiences. I would experiment. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who's figured this out. I would experiment with a variety of things that go digital to gathered, with that are bicultural, bilingual, and vice versa, just to see what approaches will work. But I haven't seen anybody really figure it out, and because we're learning. But it's very easy to be multicultural on a website, very easy, and bilingual, very easy.
Thank you.
I think you kind of answered a question that Rob had about, I take it that we need to be creative in bringing back bringing people back to the parish and giving them info about a way to engage their faith and not following up. So I think that's kind of answering that question. Yeah, Patrick's asking a question about mentoring. I'll kind of read it, but I want to just kind of curious myself at how this might work when a kind of a mentoring. People are going to a mentoring model in a lot of different ministries, whether it's marriage or kind of like RCIA, confirmation, whatever it might be. I'll read his question though. It says, I've explored a little about the concept that seems to be vibrant among millennials called revered mentoring. Do you see this having a place in the model you're suggesting?
Yes, but in churches, you always have to make it a little more modest than you might be in the business world or the education world. There's some of the most interesting mentoring that's going on is in the life issues people have. So young adults seeking out kind of a mentor who can help them in the business world or with finances or in life work. That may be where we start in church sometimes with millennials. Be the kind of church that says, we want to be here for your whole life. But of course, the people who are mentoring you are faith-filled people and that's going to come out in all the mentoring. So it's not I call it not explicit religious, but implicitly religious. I think a lot of that possibility is there. Every one of our churches has an abundance of people 50 and over. We all know that. But that's experience, that's life experience, that's work experience, that's family experience. Millennials could benefit from that, and vice versa. So mentoring, I think, always is a two-way street. But I think small experience with mentoring, and I mean small experiments, would be really worthwhile.
Very good. There was a question about, do you have advice for adult formation if you're on a tight budget? Are there resources that you think that you would want to share, or what are any suggestions that you have?
Everything I put on the Seasons of Adult Faith Formation website is free. All the resources I used were all free. So you could build out a brilliant website network and not spend a penny. Well, you spend $100 on the website, the website subscription, but the content, the abundance of content that is entirely free. So I'm amazed the abundance of high quality Catholic content for all these faith formation areas that's simply free. So if I had a very small budget, I would go right to building a network. I wouldn't worry about spending money on resources yet or expensive programs, So I think you can build great adult faith formation out of the things that are provided, which are amazingly free. The other side of the coin is you may not have any money in the parish budget, but adults have money. I mean, they simply do. So if you want adults to pay for something, you just have to do equivalencies. How many cups of coffee at Starbucks is this program? And you just got to do the little equivalencies of those things. So the nice thing about adults is, you don't have to worry about permission slips. You don't have to worry about, drivers and the rest. They have money. So if things are worthwhile, people will spend some money for it. But I can offer them things that don't cost them anything. That's what I found amazing. You could build these websites and not really spend anything.
Yeah, and there's so much out there. I think one common thing that you've brought up today is the idea of curation, and all you need to do is come up with a topic, come up with a focus, and then go out and find the things that you need, videos, text. There's just so much out there right now. Just do some Googling, some searching, and if you don't have to buy into the programs to get that. Somebody just jumped in with a comment. He's asking if there's other. We're kind of running out of time, but Kevin's from Idaho, and he was pointing out that the St. Paul's at the Boise State University are offering busy or unchurched students, faculty, and staff kind of an episodic series of Easter preaching series, a Hangry Lent preaching series, etc. So there's somebody all they have to do is come up with a topic, a focus, give it a name, a hashtag like you said before, and then just find the content or ask people to help you out to find the things that are there. So, but before I go, John,
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
one more response to the last one. Parishes can work together on building an adult faith formation network. We don't do this alone. Like it's harder to collaborate when you're doing a gathered program. But online, there's no reason why what I just shared with the Seasons of Adult Faith, 3 or 4 churches in a geographic area say, we're all going to partner on this. And we're all going to co-list our gathered programs. And we're going to open up to all the adults in our area. We need to do much more of that and not be forced by mergers to do it, but actually do it because we want to collaborate. We can build great adult faith formation just with 3 or 4 churches working together. It'd be great.
Absolutely, that could be a great role for diocesan leaders that are here too as well. Good, John. We've got a lot of people asking about your websites, and we'll make sure and link those up. The resources you mentioned before, we'll make sure they have those links on the recording page. But go ahead and tell everybody where we can find out more about the things you talked about today.
Yeah, if you go to lifelongfaith.com and then just go to the presentations page, and it's right up on top as it's today.
Great.
And then if you just look around the website, you'll see a lot of free stuff. So, but those 2 adult faith formation journals are available for free. And one of them really takes each of the 4 seasons and provides lots of examples and practical approaches to working with each of the 4 seasons as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, Christina.
Great. And before we sign off, we would like to thank our partners once again, the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association of Catholic Family Life Ministers, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation of Priest Council. If you're not familiar with their organizations, please check out their websites, which you can see displayed here on the screen. The webinar, as well as all of our past webinar recordings, appear on YouTube, Vimeo, and the Ave Maria Press website at avemariapress.com/webinar-videos.
Good. And I want to point out that this is the final webinar of our spring season, but it's also the first in a series of webinars that are kind of an increased partnership with the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership and specifically the Adult Faith Formation Committee. So John's kind of introducing some strategies that you can use, especially from a digital focus, for all the different age groups that we might work with in adult faith formation. In the beginning in the fall and into the spring, we're going to have a number of other webinars for many different generations or seasons of adulthood. The Generations and Seasons of Adulthood is the first in a series of webinars sponsored by the NCCL Adult Faith Formation Committee in partnership with Ave Maria Press. And the Seasons of Adult Faith Formation series explores the principles and practices of adult faith formation based on the life tasks, needs, and spiritual faith journeys of the 4 seasons or generations of adulthood. Companies these are young adults, 20s and 30s, midlife adults, 40s and 50s, mature adults, 50s and 70s, 50s to mid-70s, and older adults, 75 and over. So these webinars are going to be companions to the Seasons of Adult Faith series and articles that are being published in the Catechetical Leader beginning in April 2017 and on the NCC website. Blog. So we're excited to have this first in a series of webinars. You can see on the screen some of the dates they've got planned out beginning in September 19th, and then the next one after that is in November 7th, and then finally January 23rd, and then there'll be another one in March. We don't know the date quite yet, but this is kicking off a little kind of mini series within the professional development webinar series, which we're excited to do with NCCL. So John, thanks for kicking us off in this little series. I appreciate it. Good. Well, thanks again, everybody, for being with us this kind of season, the 2017 or 2016, 2017. It's been a pleasure to bring these webinars to you, and we're looking forward to coming back again after the summer and into the fall season. So God bless everybody, and John, thanks again for doing this.
Pleasure.